1 minute you're a successful career woman in control of her life, and 40 seconds later you're a piece of meat begging not to be butchered.
Don't think about it.
It's all I think about. God, we're just something on the food chain, Tessa. Man wants to hurt us. He hurts us.
Stop it. Don't do this to yourself.
How would you feel if it happened to you?
Welcome to Highlander Rewatched, the podcast where we talk about Highlander the series in detail. Today's episode is episode 11, See No Evil.
The weirdest title we've had yet.
Yes, sir. This first aired December 19th, 1992. It was directed by none other than Thomas J. Wright. We all know what he did. Come on, we can hear you out there. Say it with us.
No holds barred.
Yes, it's great.
Yay.
Watch it for Kurt Fuller. Stay for Hulk Hogan.
Yeah,
that's right.
And this was written by Brian Clemens. So Brian Clemens is he's like an old school TV writer. He wrote like the old Avengers TV show.
Yeah.
With like
Danger Man, the Patrick McGowan. Ooh. If anybody watches The Prisoner, that's yeah. It's good stuff.
And yeah, a lot of stuff in like the late 60s and the 70s. He actually died in 2015. This year, I think in January he died.
Oh, that's sad.
But the weirdest thing he wrote the story to Highlander 2.
Oh.
And it's also crazy. This is the only episode of Highlander, the series, he's written. But I don't know how he got hired or to work on Highlander 2. And obviously, we're going to get to that a couple months down the road at this point. But
yeah, but that's... Maybe they saw Highlander 2 and were like, yeah, your services will no longer be required.
I don't know.
What, the story? That, what does that mean? He just came up with the general idea?
He came up with, the gist of it. And so I'm curious, what was his gist of it? Was there, I don't know if there's another story credit on that as well.
I'm not sure.
But if he came up with some of the stuff that goes on in that movie.
Bad gist.
Whoa. So the guest stars in this episode are J.G. Hertzler as Marcus Carolus. So this dude is the villain, the bad guy in Zorro. Because we keep talking about Zorro a lot. Like the New Adventures of Zorro, he's the bad guy. He's what's his name? Del Soto, I think is his name.
A very white-looking guy. Just pointing that out.
Yeah.
So,
but he pulls off Spanish pretty well. In the show.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
He definitely doesn't look the part in this episode.
Yeah, I wish he had more to do in this episode, because I remember him being a great villain in Zorro, and in this he's kind of he's there for 30 seconds.
Yeah, but he does a good job.
Oh, he does. Yeah,
he sticks to the quality villains that we've seen.
And then really the other guest is Moira Wally Beckett, as Natalie Ward, and she is the, I guess, battered.
Yeah, the victim
in the episode. But she doesn't have a lot of acting credits. She is mostly a producer, and she was a producer on Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Which is
whoa.
Yeah, whoa indeed. And other shows too. I forget off the top of my head, but
a show called Philly, which is interesting to us because we're from Philadelphia.
Hey,
I never knew there was a TV show called Philly.
Philly? I don't know.
Yeah, it's about Philadelphia. I don't know.
What?
Yeah.
It's just about pretzels and tomato pie.
Character is a walking cheesesteak.
Beating up hitchhiking robots. It's great.
Yep.
Oh, and speaking of robots, earlier in her acting credits, she has a very small part. I think she's listed as jogger. She is in the movie Runaway, which is the only movie directed by Michael Crichton.
Oh, shit.
And it's that movie's insane. It's Tom Selleck stars, and he's a cop in the future that is on the robot task force.
Yeah.
So when robots are misbehaving and shit, he's the one who's got to deal with them. So anyway, the IMDb episode description for this is: a friend of Tessa is assaulted and nearly killed by a serial killer who scalps his victims. Duncan believes him to be a copycat killer who was basing his crimes on those of an immortal whom Duncan confronted years ago.
The episode begins, Duncan and Tess are going to see her friend at the generically named Municipal Stadium.
Very
which
good.
I guess Seacouver has a football team that has tickets that are hard to get because Duncan's like angling for some tickets on the 50-yard line.
What do you think the name of the sports team is? It's like Metro
City Sports Team.
Sports.
I would go for the Seacouver Quickeners, but that would
That's
just
good. The Seacouver Highlanders.
In any case, they're going to see her because she wants to buy some of Tess's art to gussy up Municipal Stadium.
She saw those donuts in the park, and she was
She's
like,
get them.
Yeah, I gotta get me some of these.
But then,
That's what she sounds like.
but again, this weird plot of like Duncan sort of being a womanizer comes back.
Yeah.
And this has been introduced since episode 1 when like Connor says to him, "You've had most of the good women throughout history." With his Christopher Lambert laugh.
This is creepy. He has like a pamphlet with her picture on it.
Yeah, which is for Municipal Stadium, but for some reason just has a picture of
her?
on it. And like Duncan's saying something weird and generic, like, "Oh, elegant, great foundation, blah blah blah."
What does that mean?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Duncan's all about the base.
Come on, you guys know what it is. When you talk about
it's a
women,
good
guys get together, they talk about
foundation.
girls. They got the foundation. I'm a meathead. This has been a preview of the Philly TV show. What was the show called? Philly. Is that in my
This
head?
is a preview. Yeah,
That's probably what the show was like.
that's exactly. That's the cheesesteak talking.
Yeah.
So he's like basically eyeing this woman up, and Tess is like, "You're talking about the stadium, right?"
And he's like, oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Blah.
So they go to this very poorly lit Municipal Stadium. Like, I
It's
guess
pitch black. This whole sequence, like, is pitch black.
like she's there. It looks like she's working and she's gonna meet people, and just has no interest in turning the
They
lights
probably
on.
contacted the city in Vancouver and were like, can we shoot at the stadium? Yeah, but it's like, it'll cost that much. Well, I don't have that much. We're not turning the lights on.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, all right, fine. We'll deal with it.
Yeah, we'll bring a spotlight or two.
So she's expecting Tess and Duncan to come visit her, and she's alone in the box.
It's just her
working.
and the security guard, Sam.
Sam.
Is downstairs.
Useless security guard Sam.
Yep, who does absolutely nothing. And also, is this like the same Sam that has those software upgrades? Does he moonlight as a security guard? I don't know.
So she's up there. She hears someone coming, and she thinks it's Tess and Duncan. But no, it's basically the Red Baron.
Yeah, he looks like the gyro captain from the Road Warrior. He's dressed up in like this weird pilot outfit. But also they show up, so he sneaks up behind her, and there's this weird POV shot that I don't understand.
He has like
back.
MTV vision.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's just
MTV
like-
vision, like Predator vision or something. But like he's a normal man. I don't understand why he has this vision.
Yeah, it's very puzzling. But one thing that is cool is right before that starts, the music in this episode is pretty cool, actually. And there's like this crazy guitar cue, and he's like, before you realize that he's in this ridiculous 1920s, this like, not 1920s, World War I aviator outfit. Before that, it looks like he's just kind of a biker, and there's like this cool like as he appears and like draws this knife. I'm like, oh, like this is cool. It's like we talked about the music a little bit in Mountain Men. It's like the music comes a little more to the fore in some of these episodes.
Yeah.
So he sneaks up on her, and he's going to scalp her, I guess.
Yeah, it's brutal.
It is brutal.
It is pretty
like,
pretty
they end up cutting
intense.
to her head, and it's like a bloody mess. It's
blood
gross.
everywhere Saturday afternoon on UPN.
Yeah. But luckily, Duncan and Tess have arrived to the scene. Like, they were coming anyway, and they've, like, interrupted this murder.
Yep.
And so Tess attends to her friend Natalie, and Duncan is, like, in hot pursuit
After this
the biker guy.
yeah. And this biker guy, they like tussle a little bit on the stadium steps, and Duncan's like owned again by this like untrained dude.
Yeah, it kills me because like Duncan is only ever as effective as the plot needs him to be.
Right.
And like sometimes like Cypher from the Matrix can just like push him over and he's done. And then other times he's like the like kung fu master.
Right.
Other times. And it's just all about what the plot needs in that given instance.
Right.
But
So-
he's again forgotten how to fight.
Yeah. So there's this chase scene, which is like kind of okay. I kind of like that they're hopping around.
Yeah, there's a cool tumble down the steps. Like there's some good.
Yeah, there's some good stuff. But ultimately, this killer escapes. He gets on a bike, drives away. Duncan can't pursue.
After barreling into this security guard.
Yeah.
And whatever this, like, the guy just kind of bumps into him. The security guard just, like, crumples like paper. And, like, can't get back up. He's like, oh.
And he didn't hear the woman shrieking?
I guess not. Also, I have a note that, like, so this killer is running down the ramp. Sam has his back towards him. He doesn't notice this guy's behind him until, like, the last second. And the first thing he does is pull his gun out. Like, it's like, there's someone behind me, a gun. Like, it's like, why is your gun out? Like, all the security guards in this show are, like, way, like, jumping on the violence. Like, cause
like that guy that slammed Richie
into the wall and breaks
Yeah.
the drywall.
Yeah.
Like, the security guards here are pretty trigger happy.
Watch it, lightning lips.
Old lightning net.
So we cut to a little bit later, and Detective Sister he's back, which is surprising because it's like, oh, he made it into another episode. Good for him.
He survived.
Yeah, the cops
made the cut.
The cops have a bigger death rate than the immortals in this show. Like they just get cut. It's like, fuck 'em.
There can be only one police officer in Seacouver.
So they're questioning everybody. Also, there's another new cop that's introduced, which is weird.
Yeah, and he has
Graffini.
Graffini. He has the most animated hand gestures. It's like, so what? Have you seen this guy? What's going on? Can you give me a description? What can you tell me? Can you tell me anything? No.
And for the listeners, Eamon is flinging his.
I'm flailing my arms all over the place. Sorry, guys.
But it's weird because they've introduced the sister guy as like the new cop, but in this episode, he's like
taking
like a background
seat. Yeah.
cop, and it's like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know if they're going for a good cop, bad cop thing.
Yeah,
I don't know what's happening, but there's another new cop. So, and then Randy shows up. Rando McFarland. She's back. And so she's referred to this killer as the Scalper. And she's like, well, this has happened before, which is news to everybody. It's like, oh, okay.
And also, she gets directly onto the crime scene. And they're like, how'd you get here? And she's like, I'm very popular with your men. And it's like, whoa. Like, this,
Yep.
In case the listeners haven't noted, at least at this point in the series, the female parts are a little underwritten.
So not really much happens here, other than it seems like Duncan maybe isn't telling the police everything.
Right.
Because of course he's not, because it's Duncan, and he's got to, like, shoot the cops in some way.
Yep.
So in the next scene, Duncan's back at his studio, and he is, like, onto this. All of a sudden, like, he knows the deal.
And we don't know why. Like, you get a hint as he's leaving that he knows something, because she asks him a question, and he's like, those who don't remember the past are doomed to repeat it.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is vaguely threatening when he says it. Like, when he says it to her, I'm like, whoa.
Well, she just asked for, like, can I get a quote? And he just says that, and it just seems like, it's like, oh, this is just some quote people know.
Here is a quote.
A quote, right.
Well, here's what
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears.
Yeah.
Here you go.
I didn't catch this. Like, does something make him suspicious about this? Or is it just that it's a scalping?
I don't know.
That it makes him think of this, spoiler later in the episode, like, he knows someone that was a scalper. Like
Was that person a scalper?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how much he plays it out, but I think we're supposed to think so because we discover that there's an immortal named Marcus.
Yep.
Marcus, who's like a thespian in some way, and he was betrayed by a blonde woman, so he kills similar-looking women because they remind him of her. But I guess, like, there's this weird connection to the hair, so, like, he scalps to, like, remove their hair.
Right.
I think it's supposed to be the link.
So Tess gets back, and she had just been visiting with Natalie in the hospital, and she's like, who would do this to somebody? And Duncan's response is like, and he says it's
so long.
He's like,
so
a man who
long.
was betrayed by the one he loved and then went insane because of it. It's like, wait, what? Like,
when he's telling her this, he's staring her dead in the face, emotionless. It's like he was referring to her, like he's being passive-aggressive or something.
But yeah, it's like, how does he conclude any of this? Like, that guy...
This is another
once loved and like, okay, I guess, like,
this
fine.
is another
Thanks,
like
Duncan.
Adam West Batman Riddler moment where he just immediately knows what's going on for no reason.
Tess is like, you know him, and he's like, someone like him, and so we get a flashback, and it's Seacouver 1925, according to the Watcher Chronicles. I think the flashback's actually cool.
This is the best part of the episode.
Yeah,
It's actually
by
great.
far.
It's in black and
awesome.
white, which is
Yeah.
fun. Like, it's got like some style to it.
Duncan's wearing like these two-tone shoes and a
Yeah.
bowler hat. It's like
awesome.
It's kind of
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I don't know if this is just like a weird film thing or not, but like they didn't get the color timing quite right because it's like it's not completely black and white.
No,
like it's
no.
a little red.
It
like,
looks-
the
it
red
looks-
is still there. It's like you guys couldn't do the color timing. No?
It looks
Okay.
wrong. It's cool, but it looks wrong. Like it doesn't look like an old movie, which
Yeah.
is what I think they were going for.
So what we witness is Duncan is in the Orpheum Theater, we find out, and he's confronting this guy. This is the villain from Zorro De Soto, whatever his name was. And they get into a scuffle. He throws like a knife in his
that's
stomach.
awesome.
which
Short
is-
sword. It's a great. It's like
Yeah.
like a straight shot to the gut.
Yep.
And Duncan then puts on his weenie voice.
Yeah.
You killed her 300 years ago.
So it turns out the backstory we get is that this guy's lover found out who he was and like ratted him out, and he ended up getting burned as a witch, he says.
They burned me. Is what he had.
And so he was like devastated by this and ended up like losing it and I guess killing his lover.
Yeah.
But he's been like psychologically like damaged by this whole thing, and now he's like a serial killer who kills people that look like his former love. And he's been doing it for 300 years. This fight ends. Oh, the way Duncan ends the fight, he's just like the way he says this is like to his buddies, like, "Bye, Marcus," and he cuts his head off.
Well, like, so I was a little confused as to what the relationship was supposed to have been at this point because they know each other. Like, it doesn't begin with Duncan saying like I'm his like standard intro.
Yeah.
They know each other. He
Right.
calls him Duncan, not McLeod.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like there's some closeness between them. Like, he's like, "Come with me, I want to help you."
Yeah, because Duncan knows about this past. He's like, you
Right.
should like. He's like, this isn't Lenore. That was 300 years. Like, Duncan cares about him. I think.
I think. But
Has
then
he
he's
been
like,
letting this man murder people for 300 years? Or is this
Does
a
he-
recent...
I assume
snap?
it's more recent.
Okay.
Or
Well,
no, not the
he
snap
says-
is more recent, but that Duncan discovers it.
He
more
said
recently,
he killed 5 people before he got to stop him.
which may have just been in Seacouver, not
Right,
necessarily
exactly.
before that.
Well, the Watcher Chronicles get deep into like how many people he killed, which is a lot.
How many?
I don't know if I have the exact number down, but also this guy Marcus is like super old according to the Watcher Chronicles. It says Marcus was born in 136.
What?
Whoa!
Yeah.
So this is the oldest character we know about so far.
Yeah, in
This
the
guy's-
Roman Empire. Well, we don't know about. The Watcher Chronicles have told us about, like, so to speak.
Right.
But yeah, it says he killed like a ton of people.
So
So yeah, I don't know if Duncan knows about more or just these 5 in Seacouver.
yeah, it's unclear, but for whatever closeness they seem to have, he does dispatch him kind of efficiently at the
Yeah.
end. He's just like, all right,
Yeah.
sorry.
But it's a cool fight, and
Yeah.
but I guess at this point, can we talk a little bit about like? I guess is this the first time we've seen like a psychologically damaged immortal?
Overtly, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because this guy seems like he's like, I mean, Slan and some of these guys, like we've seen Kooks.
Yeah, they're
But-
like insane evil people, but he seems like he's not a bad person. I don't think.
No,
Presumably, I mean, like we
Yeah.
don't get much backstory, but I don't have
Right.
any reason to think other than this like weird tangent he's on that he's like a bad guy.
Yeah.
That something is just like wrong in his head, and he thinks he's getting like revenge on his like lover who betrayed him like over and
Yeah.
over again. So I guess that can happen as an immortal. So
and
that's
that's
a new
cool. Even to a
element.
guy, if this was 300 years ago, he was already what 1,580 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's a long time for him to all of a sudden snap. Then
Yeah.
also the jump through the painting is amazing in this.
Yeah.
That's so good. It's only one up to by the quickening.
The quickening is crazy.
Yeah.
So like all these like lights, they're like on a stage, and all these
Right.
lights are breaking. But meanwhile, Duncan is just flopping around like a fish.
I have the same thing. He's a fish.
He's just like whoa, and just like flipping and flopping, which is very different because he seemed much more in control in other quickenings.
Well, the other ones, I mean, like we haven't mentioned this for a while, but like the quickenings are like orgasm thing. Like they, to me, they carry that sort of weight with them. Like there's like a big face and like
Yeah.
And that you do it
Rust-
3 times a day.
No, but, like they have this. There is some weird like sexual element to it. Even
Yeah.
Yeah, especially since it's called a quickening.
Yeah. But yeah, this one is different because it's just like it is a fish flopping around on the stage. It's like okay,
Yeah.
Well, you guys, he has to do
Maybe
one
it's
of
'cause
these
he's-
every week.
Maybe it's because he's so old, like he's overwhelmed by the
sure.
juice. I don't know.
So and then the cut back is great because it cuts back to the president and Duncan's just like he was insane. It's like, yeah, I guess so. Of course.
A real nutball.
So Duncan thinks just because this guy's a serial killer, which is, I think, still a big maybe at this point, because we
Yeah.
only have 2 deaths.
Right.
Or not even. We have 1 death
Yeah.
and 1 attempt.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know how much is, like, the case is
Well,
built.
Duncan also mentions earlier, like, the other Immortals' killings were, like, sensationalized in the papers
Right.
when it happened. So a copycat could easily do
Have
research
Yeah, you
and
could,
get
like, figure
all
this
these
all out.
records. Yeah.
So, yeah, so he bases this whole thing. He's like, this guy's copycatting. And it's like, what's this based on? The fact that the one person he killed was blonde and this other person killed blondes? It's like,
Yeah.
that's a real specific fetish this
Yeah.
serial killer has. Like,
Plus,
what?
Plus the scalping. And they reveal that the Municipal Stadium is built over the scene of one of the murders.
yeah, right.
Like, I think that theater or
I
whatever
guess.
was like, this
Yeah.
was the scene.
He says it's orchards.
Oh, Orchards, yeah. Was where one of the murders happened. So
Still,
there's a,
this does seem flimsy.
he gets
though.
there very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're in the stadium walking around, like, tracing back the scene of the crime. Duncan's just like, oh, back in the day, this was all just, like, orchards and stables, and it's where Marcus killed one of his victims. And then Tess just turns to him, and she was like, what was it like back then? And it's like, did you say these lines reversed? It's like, he just said it. He just told you what was here. Orchards and stables. What was it like? I want you to
boy.
be my woman.
McLeod.
Do you get lonely? God damn it. Do you listen, Tess? Sorry.
Tess has some listening issues.
I literally hope they just edited that in opposite order.
Yeah.
So Randy then comes to Municipal Stadium after this exchange happens, and Duncan feeds her this information about a copycat killer. Because he wants Randy to tell the police because
Right.
he doesn't want to deal with them any more than he already has. So using this information, the cops then send up this like sting operation in the park using like a blonde-haired cop who is terrible at her job.
Oh, absolutely awful. Like, she's not paying attention. She's tired. Takes a break on a bench.
And then like somebody calls and like she's 45 seconds late.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
because she walked too slow between checkpoints. But it's like, if you guys are far enough away, there's like a place you can't see her. What were you gonna do if she gets attacked?
Yeah.
Just be like, uh-oh. Like,
Ruh-roh. She lost that one.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Oh, rats. But
Seacouver is a dangerous town for cops, as we've established.
Yeah, but we do get to see this guy. He's like
Right.
a groundskeeper in the park, and he's like getting ready to try and scalp her.
But he's, like, on the job?
yeah, like, does he really
Or
work there? Or was that like a
Is he in
disguise? I
disguise?
think
Maybe
it was
he's
a
in disguise. Yeah. That just occurred to me.
There's also a funny scene where they're back in Tess's bedroom, and there's like a bunch of Tess side boob. It's like, bam! But Duncan is expressing how worried he is. He's like, I'm worried the police can't handle this. And he's like, and I'm not doing anything. And it's like, yeah, you did nothing by not telling the police.
Yeah.
Like, he knows something, and he's like, I'm worried they don't know what to do. It's like, your fault, buddy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He could have just anonymously reported that also, instead of doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, the whole thing's a little kooky.
So we end up in the killer's basement after this encounter in the park. And so he's like a weird nerdy looking dude, like, I don't
With
know.
a murder den.
Yeah, he's
Like,
got this,
Yeah.
there's like old newspaper clippings and posters. He like at some point looks in the mirror and just starts screaming. And then he just starts crying.
Oh, boy.
yeah, and then he's got the scalp. One of these women's scalps on the
Is
side.
that what that is? I thought it was a
think.
wig. Because he's like at one point
Oh.
he's brushing it.
I assume
That's
that
the
was
scalp.
his girlfriend's scalp.
So he's got like a
And
bloody headpiece there.
Yeah, and I thought for a second he was gonna. I was so convinced
Oh, he's gonna put it on.
he was gonna wear it because he's also kind of bald. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you just go and put that on.
So they give no character development for
No.
the serial killer. And the whole time I was wondering, like, why does he identify with any of this? Like, he's got this weird, like, 1910s, 1920s persona.
Yep.
And I just, what is why? Like, why did he choose this? Like,
Because he's a cop. I assume it's because he's a copycat, and his first victim was a blonde-haired woman who betrayed him. He's got like this parallel with.
So do we think that's what happened? That his first victim was a woman that did betray him?
Yeah, I think so.
So did he do that first and then research these crimes?
I think he probably already had an affinity for this.
Well, it's like, this is kind of like, it's a pretty common plot in this kind of stuff is people that imitate Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is like
seemed like
that
the same thing.
without Jack the Ripper, basically, which, you know, isn't a terribly original plot point for a show in the first place. But anyway.
So during this, he looks in the mirror and he says, in this manner, he talks like a robot. He's like, and he has these giant pauses. We will kill them all. They will not betray us again. It's like, it's so crazy. So then he sings a little song at the piano. He sings "Let Me Call You Sweetheart," and it's like, okay,
So he's like literally trying to be Marcus.
Yeah.
I guess. Like,
Well, Marcus
he was
had a
best man
piano
or something.
on the stage,
He's
right?
An actor because
Yeah.
he found him at the theater because he was like on the playbill for
Right.
Right.
a show that was going to be there.
So we're back in Duncan's office, and this is where the show really gets into like noir territory. Like they are playing a cue that's used in like the Naked Gun. Like the music they use in this scene is from the Naked Gun, and he has this interaction with Randy that's so weird. Okay, so she comes in and she starts asking Duncan questions, and aside from, like, I'll skip over everything she says because it doesn't matter. It doesn't lead anywhere.
It never matters.
But just to talk about, like, Randy's role in this episode, like, she accomplishes nothing. Like, it's like they have these pieces in place to be like, oh, we want this to be like an old-timey noir thing, which would make sense in this, like, episode. It's like, oh, this is a 20s era thing. Like, let's make it stylistically that way. They have all these pieces set up, but they don't, like, fill it with any actual content. Like, Randy comes in, but, like, isn't really this go-getting. Like, Randy actually never gets any info herself. Like, she's just being fed information by Duncan. And it's like,
Right.
well, it's like, that's great, because now we've just taken away, like, any sort of, like, authority this female character has. It's like, she does nothing. Like, she's just given answers by the man, which is, like, I think disappointing. Nothing, there's no, like, they set up that there's supposed to be, like, sexual tension in this scene.
Yeah.
But every time they've done that multiple times she's been in this show, but the way these characters are set up, like, I am never for a second thinking Duncan is falling for Randy. Like,
No.
So there's no tension there either. Like,
they just don't have chemistry.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the writing assumes they do, but it's just not there.
Nope.
so they're just forcing these, like, plot elements. It's like, oh, she's supposed to be like this seductress or just this, like, go-getter reporter that's got a lot of, like, as you said earlier in another episode, moxie, and, like, she's got this, like, charisma, but, like, it never pays off, and there's nothing that happens because of it. I don't know, it's really disappointing because, again, this is her episode to shine. Like, as much as we think this character's like bleh, like, this is the one where she could not be bleh. Like, she could really crush it and be interesting and be at least fun. Like, this could have been her fun episode.
Somewhere in the middle of this, we cut back to like the Red Baron in his murder den, and
Cutting an orange?
he's scalping an orange.
And he's like dressed to the nines.
Yeah, like they do like a real close up. Like we're literally supposed to think he's scalping this orange. It's so weird, and then it just cuts again.
Yep. And to Natalie having a bad dream, are reenacting this attack on her.
After Duncan speaks to Rando, he comes out and talks to Richie, and he's trying to figure out, like, what's going on. Like, why hasn't the killer killed again? Like, he should have struck again. And Richie's like, I get it. He's like, the knife. He needs to buy a new knife. And it's like, so first off, that's crazy because, like, what is that, like 10 minutes, Richie? Like,
Yeah.
That's why he's late. He needs to, like, spend 10 minutes and get a knife. It's a dumb, But then Duncan's response is even crazier because Duncan says, "No, he's too smart for that. Too smart for buying a knife? Like what? Like what's the alternative? Like
What?
I don't know.
Chop their heads off with his shoe? I don't know. Like,
no, it's nuts.
also,
No,
too
he
smart for what?
leases knives.
It's just a bunch of like made up dialogue. Like I mean, obviously it's made up dialogue, but it's just like. It's just like, yeah, have him say something about why. It's like, oh, he's too smart for that. Like, they wanted that line in there, like, to let us know that this killer's smart. Even though the setup for that is like, he didn't get a new knife. He's too smart. Like, it's like, what?
You already have one. Check Bed Bath & Beyond. Yeah. So, Duncan now has a stroke of genius, or just a stroke, and thinks he's discovered a lead on how to find the guy, which I think we have a clip.
We have a clip. So Duncan, I'll just play this. So Duncan realizes it's the motorcycle is the clue they need. So we're going to play this clip right now.
I'll get something else.
Like what?
The Indian.
The what?
Here it is.
The Indian, you know.
What the fuck?
So Duncan,
What was that?
it's like the Indian, don't you know? And he does a little head bob, like he's like doing like this sort of like this Indian dance or something. Like this is so crazy. He puts on an Indian accent, but this is where this gets so crazy. So first off, they're referring to the motorcycle. They're called Indian motorcycles. If anyone doesn't know about these motorcycles, they're like the first motorcycle ever. Like, they're American motorcycle. From like the early 1900s. They're cool. But they're Indian, like Native American Indian motorcycles. So this is my theory, is that Adrian Paul did not know any of that. And it's just like, he'd not seen one at this point. They hadn't shot those scenes where they show one that has a picture of like an Indian with like the headdress and the whole thing. So he's like, oh, Indian. And so he delivers the line that way. But also that's weird because it's like, wait, was the Indian, don't you know, in the script? Like,
He probably ad-libbed
my guess is
this.
he ad-libbed that.
And they were like,
left it in
this is
Richie
great.
kind of laughs.
Yeah.
It's like, the Indian, don't you know? But then everybody in the crew was like, like, yep.
We more of that.
We got it. Cut print.
That's it. And like nobody was like,
This is kind of racist.
Adrian, just to let you know, like, wrong Indian accent, like the other one.
Duncan, we just want to let you know we're fine with the racism. Directed at the right people, please.
Right. This is nuts. Jesus Christ.
Oh, boy.
Fuck. The Indian. I can't even continue. The Indian, don't you know?
Don't you know?
Yeah.
So, at this point, I guess now they go to the bike shop.
The bike shop.
Yeah, bike shop.
This is a good interaction. Well, Richie says hi to this bike guy, and he's like, "Yo, what's up, babe?
Yo, Herbie! Yo, bro. So Herbie comes out. Herbie's wearing a red button-up, like, dress shirt with a leather vest.
Leather vest. He's like, Richie,
He's a businessman.
do you want one leg broken or both?
It's which arm do you want broken or whatever it is.
So Richie's had some dirty dealings with this guy.
Well, it's weird because he's like, he's all mad at Richie. He's like, you were supposed to get me those parts, and he's like, would you get busted? And so he's like mad at Richie. Like, he wants to break his legs for essentially not robbing people. Like,
Yeah, not having him fence stolen goods.
Yeah, he knew Richie was not like... It's not like Richie was just his parts guy. Like, he knew Richie was just stealing parts for him.
Right.
And so he's all like, mad. Like, you got busted?
Yeah. Oh, you mean criminals sometimes threaten other criminals in their business dealings? Crazy.
But why would you threaten him for just getting busted? Like, it's like, well, that happens. Like... I guess you got caught. Like, I'm not going to blame... I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're applying a level of reasonableness to people engaged in illegal activity.
Herbie seems pretty reasonable to me.
Herbie does seem pretty reasonable. Like, the whole thing kind of rang a little false, but that being said...
He seems fully loaded to me. So they basically say, Herbie, about this Indian...
Yeah, so Herbie's response to... this Indian bike is crazy. Like, he doesn't speak like an expert in this scenario
Yeah.
at all. Like a guy who owns a motorcycle shop. Here we go. We're gonna play this clip.
I got out of the parts business.
What, you get busted?
You get busted.
Sort of.
He's got a shit-eating grin when he says it.
Listen, Herbie, I was wondering if maybe you could do us a little favor.
What?
What?
We're looking for a guy who owns an Indian.
Great bike.
Don't you know?
Fast as hell. They stopped making them 30, 40 years ago, though.
Great bike,
Fast as hell.
Also, why does he
Great
give that
bike.
information completely unprompted?
For the benefit of we, the
Yeah, it's just
viewer.
to let the viewers know, because it's
Yeah.
like, why would he like? Duncan already knows he's looking for an Indian. It's so dumb.
Don't you know?
So they pass him 100 to have him let them know if this guy comes in.
Yep.
And the guy eventually comes through.
Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, the killer is now killed again.
Right.
So he walks up to this woman. It's the MTV Vision.
Yeah.
She's walking her dog Tippy.
Tippy.
And he's like, "You have lovely hair." And
Was like, can I pet your dog?
so they pan up, and she's at the Columbus house, the Columbus Hotel,
Yeah.
or something.
Columbus
so
Arms,
since his
something like that.
plot got foiled at Columbus Park, he has now diverted his plot to a different Columbus.
That's a liberal reading of those past crimes, crazy slasher man.
I guess, but I think he's playing games with the cops or something.
That's right.
So in the middle of this, Natalie that's her name, right? Natalie decides she's gonna take off the bandage and just freaks the fuck out.
And she just has this bloody head, and she's crying. She's at Tessa's house now for
Yeah.
some reason. Tess comes in.
So she takes off her bandage, and she has this speech she gives Tess about just being on the food chain, and if a man sees you, he'll just do whatever he wants to you.
Yeah.
It's this is a pretty demeaning sort of speech she gives.
It's pretty consistent with the treatment of women throughout this series, though, and the movies. Of
Yeah.
just this ever looming threat of sexual violence and
Right.
the way women are kind of possessed and traded and
Yeah, and she
used
gives
as pawns.
she gives a value assessment of herself. She's like, a man's gonna look at me, and before long, his eyes are gonna wander up and see this, referring to the mess of her head, and lose interest and not want me, blah blah blah. And it's okay, you're valuing yourself based on how men value you.
Right.
It's it's a subtle thing, but it's that's a big thing in feminist theory.
Right.
If placing your value on what a man thinks of you, and that's exactly what the fuck is happening here. So it's kind of sad.
It's
Yeah,
unpleasant.
1 minute you're a career woman.
Yeah.
Next minute you're a piece of meat begging not to be butchered.
On the food chain.
So Herbie comes through and calls Richie that the guy comes in, but Mac is not around.
Right.
So Richie decides he's going to go commando and try to...
He chases him. He
Yeah.
chases. They get in a motorcycle chase. This is a pretty cool chase. There's
Yeah,
some
there's, a jump
cool
in it.
stunts. Yeah, that jump. Richie does a jump. I'm assuming it wasn't Richie actually driving
Probably
the
not.
motorcycle.
Also, this is the first time we see Richie on a motorcycle, which, spoiler alert, this is part of his character later. He's a motorcycle dude. I don't know, this is the first time we see him
Yeah.
be
That's devastating spoiler for you guys at home.
No, but I mean, this is the first part of that character getting introduced. He is a bike dude. Richie and a motorcycle go together like apple pie and cheddar cheese.
Very good. It also continues the Chris O'Donnell parallel in Batman Forever.
He's still robbing it up.
That's right. Richie Robin.
So Richie goes, there's this whole good chase, but Richie ends up crashing into a car.
Yeah.
And getting taken out.
And the guy gets away.
Yeah. And then gets into a confrontation with Mac about this when he reveals what happened. And
Mac
it is fantastic.
Yes, Mac is upset.
Yep. Daddy Mac.
Daddy Mac. Daddy Mac.
Richie, what were you thinking? This guy's a psychotic killer.
You weren't there.
Then you should have waited or called the police. What you don't do, you don't go off on your own.
What you don't do.
He's old Michael Caine.
What you don't do.
It's he really lays into him.
Yeah.
And Richie's got this sad kind of dough in the
Yeah, I
headlights
feel bad
look.
for Richie in this.
But Duncan feels bad at the end. He's like, what am I going to do with you?
What you don't do.
What you don't do.
Duncan has, in the meantime, been feeding more information to Randy, who's been giving it to the police. And he can't give it to the police, he says himself, because it would cause too many questions.
Because Graffini is just waiting for an excuse to put me in jail.
Yeah, it's like,
he says,
like
what?
Yeah.
Why? When?
And Graffini's not the one that's been like on his ass.
He's
If anybody,
brand new
it's
about
been
this.
Bennett.
Yeah, I don't know. But Duncan shows up to the crime scene where this woman was murdered in front of Columbus House. Also, Duncan just again drives up to it and just. He's just there. The establishing shot for Columbus House, they show like the chalk outline of the body.
This outline is the worst drawn chalk outline I've ever. It is like the head's humongous.
I have written down. It looks like a clown giving a thumbs up, and a bunch of blood.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
boy.
pretty spectacular. So Randy's still kind of giving them info about this is like an Indian motorcycle they're looking for. Oh, here's a good scene. Sorry. After Duncan like really gives it to Richie, they cut to this like weird interstitial scene. Natalie is staying with Tess and Duncan. She opens her bedroom door. Natalie is sleeping. She has what looks like a plate of like yams, like roasted yams. She brings it into the room. She sits next to Natalie, and then the scene is over. She's like, "Oh, the yam scene. Okay."
Tess enters holding yams.
I rewound it like 4 times. I was like, "What is in her hands?" Cannot fucking tell. So Duncan and Tess are kind of arguing. All this dialogue is really muddled too. It's hard to hear what anybody's saying. But she's like, well, Graffini's gonna catch him, and yeah, Duncan's like, this pompous ass couldn't catch a cold. And like, I again don't know why he hates him so much, and why he's pompous. Like, none of this shit is established.
But also, like, to Natalie, he's like, "Oh, don't worry, the cops got this. They're gonna catch him."
Yeah.
So it's like
he's
and then a second later, he's just like,
yeah, nope.
So Duncan's like, he's sitting on a stakeout at the theater. He's like, the scalper knows he's there. He's not going to show. And it's like, why? Like, I don't know why.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't the scalper going to show? Is it because they know he's onto the pattern?
I guess so. He's going to look for a variation on the theater.
Orpheum, something else?
Also, throughout this whole episode, like Randy, Duncan, the cops, they're giving this serial killer more credit than is deserved because they don't know anything about him. They're like, he's messing with the cops and he's loving it. Like, what indication do you have that that's happening? They didn't get a letter or anything. Maybe he's not loving it. I don't know.
I'm very sick. I need help.
Yeah.
If he was going to McDonald's, I'd say he's loving it.
I'm loving it.
Oh, boy.
So Tess kept in. Tess now puts herself up as bait.
Which they're playing here. Can someone explain their plan here
This
to
is
me?
garbage.
It doesn't make sense.
There's like a casting call for some reason.
So Tess wants to be bait because she's blonde hair and like pretty.
Which she is those things.
Legit.
This is true.
So Duncan has this idea to have an open casting call for Man and Superman, which was the original play that Marcus was in. Which also I was trying to figure out, like, I don't think that choice of play has anything to do with like the plot of it. I don't know. I was like,
Man and Superman's a play by George Bernard Shaw, and a lot of the plot revolves around the main character is going to be engaged and he's going to be married to someone, and it's about kind of the effect of that on him. And he says some kind of odd things about women in that. Like at one point he says like women are like part vivisector, part vampire. Like they study you and like pull you apart. Like I think it ties into this notion of betrayal. This like complicated notion that between men and women. There's also like a side plot in it where
he's a used car salesman.
Yeah, he's a used car salesman. There's like a side act in it that's like, involves Don Juan being in hell for some reason.
Yeah,
and
that's like the big centerpiece of it. Don Juan in hell.
Yeah, so there might be a connection there. I suppose there's interesting man-woman relations in that.
All right,
and
let's
maybe
give
that's
them
what they're
credit for
running with.
So they run an ad in the paper. So they hope the killer will see this ad and then come to the casting call and they'll be able to get him. So meanwhile, they've got girls calling the antique store like for this casting call because it's like by appointment only. So it's not, I guess, not quite open casting, but
right.
And Richie keeps telling them that it's filled. Also, the name of the production company is Sisyphus productions, which I thought was funny. But I guess that has something to do with it, because he's like, isn't Sisyphus supposed to be like deceitful and crafty? And he was punished for being like too full of himself for it?
Is Sisyphus the guy that has to roll the rock up?
He's got to push the boulder.
hill.
I don't remember what he's punished for. That.
It's a vicissitudes.
Oh boy.
So yeah, this plot is not a good one.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the plan is, but it works for
Right.
some reason.
Well-
sort of, but not quite. So Tess is taking periodic strolls in the hopes that this guy tries to scalp her. So in between strolls, it turns out someone without an appointment tries to show up, and that's who the scalper attacks.
Right.
Yeah. Like, I was like, whose fault is this? Like, it's definitely kind of Duncan's fault, because he came up with this crazy harebrained scheme
Yep.
to, like, put people at risk. But also, I guess it's a little bit that girl's fault, because she's supposed to make an appointment, and she didn't.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, read the ad.
That's right. But she's like, she was spared because she was wearing a wig. She wasn't actually a blonde.
Right.
It is revealed.
So the ending of this is crazy. Or the end of, like, the culmination. This
Super crazy.
So Richie, like, so this woman gets mugged. We presume the killer's still in the area. Richie sees the Indian motorcycle, and he's like, I'm going to fuck this bike up so this guy can't leave. It's like, okay, I guess. Like, I guess you could just hang out by the bike, too.
What was he trying to do? It looked like he was opening a candy bar. I'm not really sure.
He's taking a snack.
But first,
They had a snack attack. So the killer, like, gets the jump on Richie,
Right.
and they start fighting. And so Tess, in, like, the heat of the moment, gets in Duncan's car, the T-Bird, and just drives it at the killer.
Yeah.
And she ends up hitting him.
Yep.
and he just goes, no!
Yeah, and he gets like plowed over.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool, I guess. But then this is so dark. So Randy shows up like out of nowhere
With the cameraman.
with the cameraman. Like, I don't know why she's there. Was that set up? She's just fucking there because she's a vulture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She just shows up.
Duncan had fed her information too, right? She had a fake newscast saying that they were on to the killer in some way.
Yeah. And I guess that was supposed to make the killer not follow his normal pattern, or I'm not sure what the
I'm not
point
sure
of
how
that was.
fit in, but I think part of the deal was that
This is so confusing.
I think part of the deal was that she was supposed to be there when they catch the guy.
Oh.
I think that was the tit
her.
for tat.
Okay.
Right. That makes sense.
So Tess has this like, Jesus Christ. So Randy gets there with this cameraman, and she's like, "Is that him?" And she's like, "Shoot the picture, John. Shoot this piece of garbage." So they're just shooting him, and this is just a shot of a man like writhing in pain. He's like he's just been hit by like a 2,000 pounds of T-bird, and he's just like every bone in my body's broken. She's like,
just
"Shoot the
going,
garbage, shoot him!"
"Help,
And
help."
then they pan up, and like Tess is like out of the car, and she's looking like mortified. She's
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, what has happened?"
And she's like, someone call an ambulance.
I have written down. She says, "Someone call an ambulance."
Amber lamps.
But yeah, this is like a really dark. I think it's really dark.
It
Like,
is.
It's
It
got
is.
this sort of like weird voyeuristic thing. Like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, shoot the pain. Like, shoot
Yeah.
this piece of shit. Like,
Yeah.
I hope he dies on TV. Like,
And Tess is like remorseful
Yeah.
and like really shaken by this whole thing. This is weird.
this is Randy at her
Yeah.
like worst. Like, as
Yeah.
much as she sticks a camera in people's faces to see pain for her own like benefit. Like, it's like, this is it. Like, she's garbage. Ugh.
This could have been a fun theme to play with. We should talk about it. We'll loop back to this
Okay.
later, but that is an interesting tension between the two of them. At this point, Tess is like, the episode's basically over. Duncan and Tess and Natalie have like a final moment together.
Yep.
Where Natalie wishes it was like her who ran her down, but Tess is like, no, you don't. Like, this will follow you, and it's really sad.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a theme. Like, that's a theme that comes in at the end. Like, there's so many themes in these episodes that just aren't explored. Like, that seems like to be a big deal at the end. It's like, well, you stopped him. I wish it was me. And it's like, oh, is this episode about revenge?
Being sweet.
Like, right. But no, it's like, I guess that's what this is supposed to be about. But they don't explore, like, the consequences. I mean, like, that's what's interesting, I think. And it's just, like, tossed away at the end. It's like, oh, like, it's not that great to get revenge. Okay. And like, especially Duncan's experience in all of this would be, I think, an interesting foil to it, because it's like, Duncan is certainly someone I think that has certainly taken revenge in the past and has maybe grown past it, because he seems to be like a level-headed guy. Like, he's like, no, you don't act quickly. You don't, like, you know, use the blade first, that sort of thing.
What you don't do.
But I thought that was kind of a missed opportunity, because it seems like this is an emotional core to the episode.
Well, yeah, Tess says, I thought ridding the world of evil would feel better. And Duncan's kind of like, yeah, I get that feeling.
But it's also weird, because she's like, I thought it would feel better, but it's like, she didn't kill him.
Right.
Like, I mean, like...
Yeah, that's the other thing. He's in jail.
Yeah, he's in jail. Like, I guess she just feels guilty about hurting him, but I don't know what you could...
He was
from my stance, it's like, I wouldn't feel that guilty about doing what I did in that scenario. Like...
Saving,
I mean, how many people have you purposefully run over with your car?
Not enough to feel bad about it.
Well,
it's like the naked gun joke.
Like, this man was, like, murdering basically your, like, adopted son.
Yeah, he was about
less.
to murder, like, your son, and you did stop him, and you did hurt him, which is bad, but... I mean, she feels this level of guilt, like she killed... I mean, maybe she should have killed him, because then there could have been... or if there was a choice at the end, like, maybe she had a way to not kill him, but maybe she felt like the fact that Richie was in danger and that she hurt her friend so bad that instead of taking the path of stopping him, she took the path of killing him and had to deal with, like, I made a choice to, like, end this in maybe not the best way, and it could have gone bad. I don't know. It's like, it just seems like an odd end that doesn't...
Yeah, and still just these female characters in this show, like, just kind of showing her as being fragile in this kind of empowering moment, kind of taking away this is one of the times she really takes control of a situation and she's really the hero, and they kind of cheapen it.
When Duncan comes out in this scene, I just want to mention, he, like, looks really sleepy-eyed. His hair is all down, and he's wearing this, like, pink shirt.
And the painting behind him is crazy, too. It's like a neon, like, still life.
Yeah.
And the before this happens, like, Tess and Natalie are having a very serious conversation about, like, I wish I killed him. And then it just cuts to the corner, neon painting, and Duncan comes out with his hair down, his shirt's unbuttoned. He's like, oh, time to go.
And he has this like weird shit-eating expression on his face.
He's like a surfer dude looking guy. Other thoughts I had on this, is Duncan even needed in this episode?
No.
Like, this is crazy. So, first off, Duncan explicitly mentions that these murders were well documented and, like, hyped up by the press. So, he's not providing any sort of, like, immortal insight. Really. And also, like, Randy's on the case, it would seem. Like, Randy had done all this research. And for some reason, she still needs Duncan to, like, feed her info. Like, where the next murder... I don't know. It seemed like this didn't need Duncan. Like, he didn't provide any sort of, like, interesting insight, like, psychologically to what the killer... Because also, like, it's not like the killer knew Marcus, so...
Right.
Because, like, you could be like, oh, well, Duncan knows the mind of the killer. It's like, well, it doesn't matter if Duncan knows the mind of the killer. It only matters what the killer knows in the press, because, like, that's his only insight. So he didn't need to be in it.
No.
Yeah, what would have been cool, I think, this should have been a Tess-Randy team-up episode.
Yeah.
Really what should have been going on. Like, that should have been all that happened in the present. Maybe, like, Tess and Richie are the ones who show up. The guy bolts rather than... trying to kill Natalie, like that all still happens. Then Tess and Randy team up. Randy gets the idea about this killer. Duncan's connection to it is as Randy and Tess are putting all the clues together, maybe Tess is able to get private information about Duncan from like materials that are in the antique shop. So there's like this other secret source of information they have. And the two mysteries are unfolding simultaneously. Like, as they find information in the past, we are seeing flashbacks of Duncan's original attempt to catch Marcus. And then the two stories kind of come to a climax.
Parallel stories.
The two stories come to a climax at the same time.
That would be awesome.
So maybe we see the fight with Marcus while the fight with the Red Baron is going on.
That would have been great.
That sounds exciting and some good editing.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Like, so that could have been kind of fun, and then it would have been cool to play with this idea again of like stopping. How do you stop this guy? Do you kill him? What do you do? And then you could have drawn, even with what happened, an interesting parallel. Maybe Tess does go too far in trying to stop this guy, and then...
Or they make different choices.
Yeah.
But then Randy's response after this happened, Tess is broken up because she's one sort of person, and then Randy is like, yeah, stick the camera in his face, fuck this asshole.
Yeah.
And that can be their, like, you know, the two lessons you learn from it, and maybe the denouement of this whole thing is maybe Duncan's like, you did what you have to do, don't feel bad, blah, blah, blah. The last shot can be Duncan feeling an intense amount of, despite comforting Tess, feeling an intense amount of remorse for killing Marcus.
Yeah.
Right.
And that would have been kind of a fun contrast.
Yeah,
I
so
think.
Davis Panzer Productions can email us at HighlanderRewatched.com if you'd like us as script consultants on the new reboot series or whatever, because I'll do it. Good stuff, Kyle. Let's see, two things I wanted to mention were behind the scenes, an interview with EP Bill Panzer. He said the network people, writers, and other producers were actually all very concerned about Tessa being the one to stop the killer in the way she did. And there were apparently lots of meetings about it. And people were concerned about the way that would come off. He never says in the interview, like, what the objections were, but that was a big point of contention, is that does Tess do this? And, I mean, maybe it's just 1992 television. Does, like, the woman maybe kill the guy? I mean, well, she doesn't in this, but...
In a show where somebody's head is chopped off every week.
Including by, like, Joan Jett. Maybe it was just from a character perspective.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's appropriate for
they
her
wanted
character.
her character to go in this direction.
Yeah.
And then finally, let's talk about the title.
Yeah, what the fuck is that? Like, see no evil? Like, I guess is referencing the Predator vision?
What?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Like, that's what I thought it was. Like, I was expecting this guy to be blind or something.
Yeah.
And that's why he sees things that way? Like, that's
Right.
his crazy
See no
alternative
evil.
sense?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's in reference to Tessa's reticence to hurt this man, or her feeling guilty about it.
Or you don't? I don't know. I cannot figure it out.
yeah.
I
It's
cannot,
baffling.
I also can't tell if... I haven't thought about this too much, so I'm going to spitball here a little bit. Like, these three episodes... This episode, the previous one, which was called Revenge is Sweet, and the next episode we're
one.
going to cover, which is Eyewitness.
Right.
Like, at some point, were all three of these episodes one? Or connected, because it's like, all right, so See No Evil, like a little bit of a spoiler alert for the next episode, which involves Tess seeing a murder, and people don't believe she saw it. It's like, all right, well, suddenly the See No Evil title makes sense for the
For that
next
episode,
not
right.
this one. It's like, okay. And then this episode has all these weird noir elements, but so did the Revenge is Sweet has this insane Duncan monologue that's right out of a noir thing. Like, I don't know. It seems like these three episodes have this weird common thread throughout them in some way. I don't know how it all makes sense or is put together, but it's weird.
It's very weird.
So anyway, that about wraps it up for this episode, See No Evil, or whatever that means. Feel free to write us in and tell us what you think that episode title means. Join us next week for the episode Eyewitness, which is a kind of Tess-centric episode. I'm excited to talk about it. Make sure to rate us on iTunes, subscribe to us on iTunes or on Stitcher. We're us on Stitcher. You can follow us on SoundCloud as well and comment on there. And if you don't have any of those things, we post all our podcasts on YouTube, so check those out. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Rewatchers, at Highlander Rewatched. Follow us on Twitter at The Rewatchers. And then most importantly, follow us on Facebook, and we've got all the deets on Facebook. And that'll do it for us, I think, today.
But what you don't do.
But what you don't do. Don't do follow us on... What are we not on? What you don't do is follow us on MySpace.
Very good.
Because we're not a band in 2003.
What you don't do is leave us long Facebook comments because we won't read them on the air. Send us an email.
Yeah, send us emails. It's a lot better for us to read those comments on air if they're emails. And that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for rewatching with us. I am Keith.
I'm Kyle.
Heyman. Highlander Rewatched.
It's the show where we talk about Highlander.
Do it live.
Thought we'd go on.
I was not sure what we were doing. I'm still not.